Soraya Winters stood in the doorway of the colonial-style mansion she'd called home for 8 years, her 7-month pregnant belly pressing against her oversized sweater as February rain hammered the driveway. Behind her, Kellen's voice echoed through the marble foyer, cold and decisive as he instructed Brielle to pack up Soraya's remaining belongings and donate them to Goodwill. Everything, Brielle's shrill voice cut through. I don't want that cow's energy contaminating my new home. Soraya's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, protecting the baby girl growing inside her. Baby Myra, they'd planned to name her. Now that they no longer existed. The morning had started ordinarily enough. Soraya had woken at dawn with back pain, dragged herself to the kitchen, and made breakfast while Kellen showered. She'd been setting plates on their custom Italian dining table when she remembered the lottery ticket in her purse, the one she'd bought 3 days ago at the gas station on a whim. The Mega Billions jackpot had hit $500 billion, an unprecedented amount that had the entire country buzzing. She'd checked the numbers on her phone while waiting for Kellen to come downstairs, her heart barely registering the digits at first. Then she'd checked again. And again. Every single number matched. All 6 numbers. The jackpot was hers. Soraya had actually laughed, a sound of pure disbelief, her hands shaking as she calculated what this meant. $500 billion. She'd wanted to tell Kellen immediately, to share this impossible miracle, to plan their daughter's future with resources beyond imagination. But before she could speak, before she could process what had just happened, Kellen had walked into the kitchen with Brielle Sterling behind him, his 24-year-old assistant from the real estate development firm. Brielle wore Kellen's dress shirt and nothing else, her long auburn hair tousled, her lips curved in a smirk that made Soraya's blood freeze. We need to talk, Kellen had said, not even having the decency to look uncomfortable. He'd slid divorce papers across the breakfast table, right next to the orange juice Soraya had freshly squeezed. I want you out by noon. The next 3 hours had been a nightmare orchestrated by 2 people who seemed to take pleasure in Soraya's pain. Kellen had revealed he'd drained their joint account the night before, transferring $47,000 of their savings into his personal account. Money they'd saved for the baby's arrival, for Soraya's maternity leave, for the nursery renovations. You won't need it where you're going, Brielle had said, examining her manicured nails. Besides, Kellen and I have a wedding to plan. Did he tell you? We're getting married in 6 weeks. Destination wedding in Bali. The villa alone costs $80,000 for the week. Soraya had tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of supporting Kellen while he built his business, 8 years of hosting his clients and managing his household and being the perfect wife, and this was how it ended. When she'd finally found her voice, when she'd begged him to reconsider for the baby's sake, Brielle had walked right up to her and spat in her face. The saliva hit Soraya's cheek, warm and degrading, and Kellen had actually chuckled, shaking his head like Soraya was a dramatic child overreacting to a harmless prank. That's when something inside Soraya had fractured. Not broken, but transformed. She'd wiped her face with trembling hands and made a decision. She said nothing about the lottery ticket folded in her purse. Nothing about the $500 billion that now belonged to her. She'd simply nodded, packed a single bag, and walked out into the rain. Her car was gone. Kellen had already had it towed, claiming it was registered in his name. Her phone was disconnected. He'd cancelled their family plan an hour earlier. She stood on the circular driveway of the house she'd decorated, the house where she'd planned to raise her daughter, and let the rain soak through her clothes. The lottery ticket remained in her purse, waterproof in its plastic sleeve, worth more money than Kellen would see in 1,000 lifetimes. But he didn't know that. And Soraya realized, as she started walking toward the bus stop 3 blocks away, that his ignorance was her greatest weapon. Behind her, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see Brielle dancing in the living room, celebrating her victory. Kellen stood beside her, probably already calculating how he'd spend Soraya's savings on his mistress. Let them celebrate, Soraya thought, her jaw setting with determination despite the rain streaming down her face. Let them plan their expensive wedding and their perfect future. Because in 6 weeks, when she returned to destroy them, they'd learn exactly what it meant to betray a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. What happens when the woman they threw away like trash comes back with the power to end their entire world? Keep reading to find out. The women's shelter on Morrison Street had seen better days, but it offered Soraya something Kellen's mansion never had: genuine kindness. The director, a woman named Patricia with silver hair and wise eyes, had taken one look at Soraya's pregnant belly and rain-soaked clothes and immediately ushered her inside. "You're safe now," Patricia had said simply. The first thing Soraya did after settling into her small room was call the lottery commission. The conversation lasted 2 hours as they verified her identity, confirmed her ticket, and explained the claiming process. By the end of it, Soraya understood several critical things. The money would be released in 1 week, she needed to assemble a legal team immediately, and she needed to stay invisible until everything was secured. The lottery commission connected her with Theodore Blackstone, a wealth management attorney who specialized in sudden wealth cases. Theodore arrived at the shelter that evening in a Mercedes, carrying a briefcase and an air of absolute professionalism. "Mrs. Winters," he'd said, shaking her hand. "Let's discuss how we're going to protect your fortune and, if I'm reading this situation correctly, how we're going to make certain people regret underestimating you." Over the next 6 weeks, Soraya's life transformed in ways that would have seemed impossible that rainy February morning. Theodore assembled a team: financial advisors, personal trainers, stylists, therapists, and most importantly, lawyers who specialized in marital law and fraud. The lottery money was released after the mandatory waiting period and press conference, where Soraya appeared looking radiant and strong, her baby bump visible beneath a designer maternity dress. The media went wild. "Local woman wins record-breaking $500 billion jackpot," the headlines screamed. But Soraya made sure to keep her last name and personal details private, using her maiden name in all public appearances. With Theodore's guidance, she invested wisely, purchasing properties and businesses, building an empire that would sustain her family for generations. She bought a penthouse overlooking the city with a nursery painted in soft lavenders and silvers. She hired a nutritionist and personal trainer, losing the pregnancy weight while staying healthy for Myra. But more than the physical transformation, Soraya changed internally. Therapy helped her process the trauma of Kellen's betrayal. She learned that his cruelty said everything about his character and nothing about her worth. She remembered who she'd been before marriage had diminished her: Soraya Chen, Stanford graduate, former marketing executive who'd given up her career to support Kellen's ambitions. That woman hadn't disappeared. She'd just been sleeping. Theodore's team investigated Kellen's finances and discovered a web of fraud. He'd been embezzling from his business partners, hiding assets, and planning to file bankruptcy to avoid creditors while funneling money into offshore accounts. Brielle, it turned out, had her own legal troubles, outstanding warrants in 2 states for credit card fraud and identity theft. "They're both criminals," Theodore had said during one of their strategy sessions. "We have enough evidence to put them both in prison. But I think you want something more personal than that." Soraya had smiled, the same expression she'd worn that rainy day in February. "I want them to feel exactly what they made me feel. Powerless, humiliated, and destroyed. But I want to do it legally." The wedding invitation arrived in her 4th week at the penthouse. Forwarded through her old email address, it was embossed with gold lettering and featured an engagement photo of Kellen and Brielle on a beach at sunset. The destination wedding in Bali had been downgraded to a local country club. Apparently, their finances already stretched thin. Soraya held the invitation and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She called Theodore immediately. "They invited me to their wedding," she said. "Are you going to attend?" Theodore asked. "Absolutely," Soraya replied. "And I'm bringing my entire legal team." The final 2 weeks before the wedding, Soraya went into preparation mode. She hired a stylist who transformed her into the kind of woman who graced magazine covers. She practiced her speech with a drama coach, perfecting the tone that would devastate without shouting. She reviewed every legal document Theodore had prepared, memorizing the details of Kellen's crimes and Brielle's warrants. Baby Myra arrived 3 weeks before the wedding, a healthy 7-pound girl with her mother's eyes and a fighter's spirit. Soraya hired a professional nanny and a security team, ensuring her daughter would never be vulnerable the way she'd been. On the morning of the wedding, Soraya stood in her penthouse bathroom, looking at her reflection. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the broken, rain-soaked figure who'd left Kellen's house 6 weeks ago. This woman wore a custom Valentino dress that cost more than Kellen's car. This woman had diamonds around her neck worth more than his entire real estate portfolio. This woman controlled more wealth than most countries' GDP. But most importantly, this woman had power. And she was about to use every bit of it. "Theodore," she said into her phone as her car service arrived. "It's time. Let's go destroy them." The betrayed wife is about to walk into that wedding with the power to shatter their world. What revenge has she planned that will leave them begging for mercy? The final act awaits. The Riverside Country Club sparkled in the afternoon sun, its manicured lawns and elegant pavilion the perfect setting for Kellen and Brielle's wedding. Soraya arrived exactly 15 minutes after the ceremony was scheduled to start, ensuring maximum disruption. Her security team entered first, 3 men in black suits who positioned themselves strategically around the venue. Then Theodore Blackstone walked in carrying his briefcase, his presence alone making several guests uncomfortable. Finally, Soraya herself appeared in the doorway, and the entire pavilion fell silent. She'd lost 40 pounds since Kellen had last seen her, her figure stunning in the crimson Valentino dress that hugged curves she'd worked hard to sculpt. Her hair, professionally styled, fell in glossy waves past her shoulders. The diamonds at her throat and wrists caught the light, genuine stones that cost more than Kellen's annual salary. But it was her face that made everyone stare. Soraya wasn't crying or angry. She was smiling with the serene confidence of someone who held all the power in the room. Kellen stood at the altar in a rented tuxedo, his face draining of color. Beside him, Brielle's bouquet trembled in her hands, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the panic in her eyes. "Please, continue," Soraya said, her voice carrying effortlessly through the shocked silence. "I wouldn't want to interrupt such a special moment." The officiant stammered something incomprehensible. Guests turned in their seats, phones already emerging from purses and pockets. This was about to become the most talked-about wedding disaster in the city's history. Soraya took 3 measured steps into the pavilion, her heels clicking against the stone pathway. Theodore followed, opening his briefcase with practiced precision. "Actually," Soraya continued, "since everyone's already gathered, maybe I should make an announcement. Kellen, you remember 6 weeks ago when you kicked me out in the rain? When you stole our savings to fund this wedding? When you let your mistress spit in my face while I was 7 months pregnant with your daughter?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kellen's mother gasped audibly. His business partners exchanged glances. "That morning, before you served me divorce papers, I checked a lottery ticket." Soraya paused, letting the words hang in the air. "The Mega Billions jackpot. Maybe you remember it was in the news. $500 billion. The murmurs turned into shocked exclamations. Brielle's bouquet hit the ground. "I won," Soraya said simply. "Every single number. $500 billion. And the funny thing is, I was about to tell you. I was actually excited to share our good fortune. But then you brought your mistress into our kitchen wearing your shirt, and I realized something you didn't deserve to know." Kellen tried to speak, but no words came out. His face had gone from pale to grey. "So while you've been planning this wedding, spending money you stole from me, I've been busy too." Soraya nodded to Theodore, who pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Theodore, why don't you explain to everyone what we discovered about Kellen's business practices?" Theodore stepped forward, his voice professional and damning. "Ladies and gentlemen, our investigation revealed that Kellen Winters has been embezzling from his real estate firm for 3 years. The total amount exceeds $2.3 million. We have documentation of wire transfers to offshore accounts, falsified expense reports, and forged signatures." The crowd erupted. Kellen's business partners stood up, shouting. His parents looked devastated. "Wait," Kellen finally found his voice. "Soraya, please, let me explain." "I'm not finished," Soraya cut him off coldly. "Brielle, sweetheart, you should know that there are active warrants for your arrest in Nevada and Arizona. Credit card fraud, identity theft. The police are actually outside right now, waiting for me to finish before they take you into custody." Brielle's face crumpled. She looked at Kellen desperately, but he'd backed away from her, his own legal troubles now apparent. "The $47,000 you stole from our joint account." Soraya continued, addressing Kellen directly. My lawyers filed theft charges this morning. You're also being sued for fraud, for initiating divorce proceedings while concealing marital assets, namely my lottery winnings that I'd purchased during our marriage. But you didn't know you'd won. Kellen protested weakly. Doesn't matter, Theodore interjected. The ticket was purchased with marital funds during the marriage. Mrs. Winters owns it, and your attempt to divorce her before she could claim it constitutes fraud. Soraya took another step forward, her expression hardening. But more than the legal consequences, I want you to understand something, Kellen. That rainy morning when you threw me out, when you laughed while your mistress humiliated me, when you took every cent we'd saved for our daughter's future. I was broken. I was terrified. I thought my life was over. She paused, her voice dropping to something more dangerous. You made me feel worthless. You made me believe I deserved the cruelty. And that, Kellen, was your biggest mistake. Because you gave me nothing left to lose and every reason to destroy you. Soraya pulled out her phone, displaying the text Brielle had sent that February morning, a photo of her and Kellen kissing, with the message, "He's mine now, fatty. Enjoy being a single mom in the gutter." This text was sent to me hours after you kicked me out, Soraya said, showing it to the horrified guests. I've kept every message, every email, every piece of evidence of your cruelty. And now the entire world is going to see exactly what kind of people you are. She nodded to her security team. One of them opened the pavilion doors, and 2 police officers entered, handcuffs ready. Brielle Sterling, one officer said. You're under arrest for outstanding warrants in Nevada and Arizona. Brielle screamed, trying to run, but the officers caught her easily. As they cuffed her, she turned to Soraya with pure hatred in her eyes. You bitch. This was supposed to be my day. No, Soraya said quietly. This is my day. The day I show everyone what happens when you underestimate a woman with nothing to lose and everything to gain. As the police led Brielle away, Soraya turned to the assembled guests. The wedding is cancelled, obviously. But feel free to enjoy the catering, Kellen's treating. Oh wait, he can't actually afford this anymore, can he? Don't worry. I've already paid the venue. Consider it my gift to all of you for witnessing what happens to men who betray their pregnant wives. Kellen collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. His mother was crying. His father looked ready to disown him. His business partners were already on their phones, presumably calling lawyers. Soraya turned to leave, her security team surrounding her. But she paused at the door, looking back at Kellen one final time. By the way, Myra was born 3 weeks ago. She's perfect, healthy, and she'll never know you existed. I've ensured she'll have everything she needs, education, security, love. Everything you tried to deny us. Soraya's voice softened, not with kindness but with finality. You threw us away like garbage, Kellen. Now live with the consequences. As Soraya walked to her Mercedes where baby Myra waited with her nanny, she heard the chaos erupting behind her. Shouting, crying, the sound of Kellen's world collapsing. She slid into the car, looked at her sleeping daughter, and felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Mrs. Winters, her driver said respectfully. Where to? Soraya thought about the future stretching before her, the empire she would build, the life she would give Myra. She thought about the woman she'd become, forged in betrayal and rain but emerging stronger than she'd ever imagined possible. Home, she said finally, her hand gently touching Myra's tiny fingers. Take us home. As the Mercedes pulled away from the Riverside Country Club, Soraya allowed herself one last look back. Through the pavilion windows, she could see Kellen still sitting alone, his expensive wedding in ruins, his future destroyed by his own greed and cruelty. The pregnant wife he'd thrown into the rain was gone forever. In her place was a billionaire mother who'd learned the most important lesson. The best revenge wasn't violence or hatred. It was simply becoming so powerful that those who hurt you could never touch you again. And as for Kellen and Brielle, their story ended exactly as it should, in handcuffs, bankruptcy, and the devastating realization that they destroyed their lives for $47,000 while the woman they tortured walked away with $500 billion. Justice, Soraya thought, smiling as she held her daughter close, sometimes wore Valentino and diamonds. The end. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Sometimes karma wears designer dresses and comes with a legal team. And sometimes, the woman everyone underestimates becomes the most powerful person in the room. This is what happens when you throw away a queen and expect her to stay broken.